Welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, we're on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. We're also simulcast on cjmarsradio.com and 365 Live. And from now on, as a matter of fact, CJ Mars Radio and 365 Live will probably be broadcasting the after shows live that so many people are enjoying and have been following on our YouTube channel, the Opperman Report. Let's see. Okay, one thing real quick. I want to welcome a new sponsor, InfinityHomePlans.com. Okay, check out Infinity Home Plans and Design Services, your resource for 3D and 2D architectural services. They offer a multitude of products, including stock home plans, 2D digital drawing sets, and 3D models and renderings and more. InfinityHomePlans.com. That's our newest sponsor. And just remember, everybody, freedomslips.com is a listener-sponsored station. So if you like what you hear tonight, you got to click on the freedomslips.com and go to the donate button there and donate to the station to get them rolling there and keep the station afloat. Tonight we have a much-anticipated guest, okay? We have Hank Harrison, an extremely fascinating man. I want you to check out his website. He has several websites. Okay, let me get over here real quick. Hank Harrison. One of them is
.com.
Okay, all right. There's Hank Harrison chiming in right now. One is HankHarrison.com. Another one is how do you pronounce that? Ipana Farms there, Hank.
Oh, that's my wife's writing academy. It's called Epona. EPONA Farms FARMS.com. One word.
And the other one is Arkives.com.
Yeah, with a K, ARKI, V as in Victor, ES.
Okay, now, Hank was with the Grateful Dead. He was a road manager for the Grateful Dead. He's written 3 books about the Grateful Dead. I got all 3 books. I got the link to his books. They're available on Amazon. You just put in Hank Harrison on Amazon. These books will come up. But the links are also on the Opperman Report blog. Now, Hank's also written a book about the murder of Kurt Cobain, and it's called Love Kills: The Assassination of Kurt Cobain. Now, that book is only available if you email Hank at zendogg@gmail.com, ZENDOGG @gmail.com. So, Hank, welcome to the show, my friend. Welcome.
Thank you, Ed.
Hank,
Thank you.
Tell us about yourself, Hank, because I know you've had a long life and a long career, and I don't want to cut you short. I really want you to tell us about your college days, your education, your work in psychology, Grateful Dead. Let's start hearing it, my friend.
Okay. Well, first thing, I want to straighten out something. I was never the road manager for the Grateful Dead. I was the shrink for the Grateful Dead. And I was unofficially the nutritionist, the procurer of chiropractors, the doctor guy who got the doctors for them, and all that kind of stuff. In other words, I was the social worker more than I was anything like a road manager. I very rarely went on the road with the Dead, and I was the guy that brought them down from the bad acid trips.
Ah.
Yeah. And that's why I never got paid from the Grateful Dead, because I had them promise me to let me do the book in exchange for all this kind, loving attention that I gave them. But it's kind of unethical to say that, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. How many years were you with the Dead?
I'd say it started out with Phil Resch being my roommate in 59 and 60, 61. Then I went to San Jose State, and Phil went off to Mills College, and I stayed out of touch for a while. Then we got back together and be pals again when the Haight-Ashbury thing started. And so I'd say that was 65. And then the Warlocks started. We were always close in touch, one way or the other, see each other at places and parties, but I really didn't know Jerry and the other guys until after the Warlocks got started. I had met Jerry once before, and I'd met Bobby, not Bobby Weir, but several other people in the band, the year before the band got started in Palo Alto through Phil. And then when they started Warlocks and the Booze in Palo Alto, those had come on down. So I went down there, and my mind literally got blown. I heard them in a pizza parlor, and I said, it's like, listen, you remember the little girl, Ivanko, that was on America's Got Talent?
Actually, no, I never heard her. No.
Yeah. Well, when you see somebody that really has unbelievable talent, it blows your mind, right? I mean, you got it,
Yeah.
And that's why I went down to Magoo's and saw Phil play with the band, and Jerry was, and Goodpin was there doing his thing with his organ, and I just about blew my wig. So he said, how about managing this? And I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do, because I was an expert on setting up nonprofit corporations at the time in '65, and I had my own nonprofit corporation. I had just finished my master's degree at San Francisco State in social psych, and I was headed towards Stanford to do some graduate work and trying to get a master's degree. I never got the master's from Stanford. I got it somewhere else. But the point is that I started bringing people down off of bad LSD trips, and I invented a thing, coincidentally, called LSD Rescue, which is a crisis intervention counseling center. It's a hotline where you call in and when you're on a bad trip, and because there were so many of them going on at the time. And that's where I made a bad enemy with a guy named Owsley Stanley. He didn't like me much because I was bringing people down off of. He was in denial about anybody having a bad trip ever. And I was a trained psychologist by that time. I had a lot of clinical work, so I said, okay. I went over to suicide prevention for a couple of weeks at a seminar. I learned how to bring people down off of suicide prevention on the telephone. And I adapted the suicide prevention protocols to the LSD and drug abuse protocols. So I was the first guy, probably at least in San Francisco and probably anywhere, to actually bring people down off of bad trips on the telephone.
Okay, now that's interesting. Now, for people who don't know, Owsley was a chemist who was one of the original cooks who was considered to make great LSD. Okay.
Yeah, Owsley. Yeah, Owsley the bear.
Right.
The bear.
So you had personal contact. You had personal contact with Owsley.
Oh, knew him well. Well, there was a guy. I don't know if anybody remembers the Blues Project. There was a guy named Danny Cal, who was the flutist for the Blues Project. There was a great blues solo on the Blues Project album. It was a big hit. And sure enough, I got a phone call one night, and here was Owsley bringing Danny into the hospital and leaving him in the front on a bench. This was Danny Cal, and he just left him there. I said, Owsley, what are you doing, man? He says, I can't have any trouble with Skype, So he left him there. So I took him in, and they were going to give him Thorazine. I got him to not do that. And we actually managed to get Danny straightened out and got the glucose levels up and stuff. And I said to myself, I'm going to have to look into this guy, Owsley, and see where he's really coming from. Because, he died. I don't want to say anything bad. Because, he died last year in Australia. But, he left a lot of good kids behind, a lot of good people, and a lot of people love him because they had good acid trips. So, but there were some bad acid trips out there, and I think that's pretty well documented.
Okay, so when you got your psychology degree, was part of your practice involving LSD therapy and stuff like that?
Later, yeah. I mean, the actual master's degree is on time perception. But, I got carried away because across the street from the school at San Francisco State, there was a Methodist Board of Alcohol Problems and Social Concerns, and Reverend Al Dale and a couple other guys, John Jones, and they said, hey, why don't you start bringing people down off of bad acid trips because we're getting a lot of calls. We're clergymen. We don't know what to do. So that's how that started. I started working with the clergymen on campus, and then it moved over to Berkeley, and then it moved to San Francisco, and the next thing you know, people were freaking out all over the place. So we had to set up a hotline call-in service and a kind of a volunteer network. And we did that. And I got a grant. That's documented. And there's quite a few movies and small little news items that are out there on the internet now. It's kind of funny how they're coming back.
Yeah.
After all these years.
Now, they mentioned you in the electric Kool-Aid acid test?
No, I was hurt. My feelings were hurt. They had Bobby Peterson in there, but not me.
Okay. Now what about guys like Timothy Leary? Did you know him?
I met him quite a few times, both at the beginning, before the Dead, at San Francisco State. Leary and Alpert came around and lectured, and that was pretty interesting. They all had tweed jackets and briefcases in those days. And I had a seersucker suit and a briefcase in those days. That's what we did. That's the way we dressed.
Right. Now, what was your impression of
What
was your impression of Leary?
Well, Leary was a very, very brilliant narcissist. He loved himself. He was very, but he was freaking brilliant. I mean, the guy had an IQ way beyond anything that I ever had. And we all looked up to him because he was so smart. I had no idea he was as unethical as he turned out to be. But, Dick Alpert turned out to be the real model of those two guys. And Paul, I can't remember the guy's name, but there were three guys, Alpert, Leary, and the other guy that started the Psychedelic Review. So I wrote some articles for the Psychedelic Review on how to bring people down off of bad acid trips, and those are on record. You can get those now. So, yeah, I thought Leary was kind of stuck on himself, but I really was impressed with Dick Alpert, Richard Alpert, also known as Baba Ramdas.
Ramdas, right, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we were just talking about him right before we went on air. Okay, all right, my friend, I tell you, you've had an interesting life. Now, besides the Grateful Dead, was there any other involvement in music industry and that kind of stuff?
Indirectly, I had a funny, after I was with the Dead, no, I wasn't directly related to Hole. No, that's later. No, at the time, when I was managing the Dead, I was on an airplane once, and Carlos Santana was there, and he paid me the great compliment. He wanted to hire me, and I turned him down. And I'm always wondering what would have happened if I had gone over to work with Carlos.
That's interesting. Did you ever meet Leon Patella?
No.
Okay.
No. I knew Diane Feinstein. You want to get into politics?
No, Leon Patella he worked for Carlos Santana, and then he went. He did the praise and worship at my church, so I became friends with him.
Oh no, yeah, I didn't, but I did know Barbara Boxer really well.
Really? Okay. Now, how'd you get? And Feinstein too? You said?
Yeah.
Okay. What was your connection with that?
When I was at San Francisco State, this guy showed up and organized some riots. There was one called the Cadillac Row demonstration. There was another one called the Fillmore, basically started the Fillmore riot. And there was another one called the Palace Hotel riot. And they weren't really riots. They started out as peaceful demonstrations. It turned into riots. And I love this guy because his name was Saul Alinsky. Anybody that knows who Alinsky was knows that President Obama studied Alinsky. Only I was before. And Alinsky's techniques were superb. He would do things like draw people in and get more money for, or have them hire more minority people in the O'Hare Airport by occupying all the toilets at rush hour. I love the guy. I love the guy to this day. I love him.
Yeah, very clever.
Uncle. Oh, man, he was a heavy guy. And they always call him a commie, and he was never a communist, ever. I want to tell you that right now. I always had trouble with Jerry Garcia because Jerry was an actual card-carrying communist. And so was Bobby Peterson and a couple other guys in the band. But that's another thing. Anyway, that's how I got involved with that.
Yeah, but I was asking about how you got involved with Feinstein and those guys.
That's how I got involved with those people.
Okay.
I started learning how to organize. I organized the Grateful Dead. I helped organize the Grateful Dead. I organized the LSD Rescue. I helped organize voting groups for Barbara and voting groups for Diane.
Okay. Okay, so you were like a political part of the political voting machine, getting votes out.
Well, I'm what's known as a Jeffersonian radical. I'm not a communist. I'm a radical. and that means I'm a little bit left of liberal, and I'll even work with the Tea Party if they make any sense at all.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, now, I'm sort of a socialist myself these days. I'm supporting I'm supporting Cindy Sheehan in the California governor election right now. Have you taken a look at her?
Yeah, I like her a lot. The trouble is Jerry's going to win no matter who's.
Yeah, I know.
Brown's in, dude. Brown's so damn funny sometimes. He cracks me up. I watch the news, and I think like Alinsky, and I look at Brown, and I say, I'm going to talk to Jerry someday to see if he's actually ever studied with Saul Alinsky, because some of the stuff Brown's doing right now is totally out of the Alinsky textbook, which was, by the way, if anybody wants to read it, it's called Rules for Radicals.
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at that. And what about, I had a guest on last week who does the San Francisco crime tours, and he ran into your daughter a couple of times. Yeah. Now, the thing is what about, do you know anything about Jim Jones and the People's Temple? Because you were around there at that time, right?
Where was I?
In San Francisco, yeah.
Yeah, at what time? When she was what?
No, Jim Jones and the People's Temple.
I was in Sausalito. I was in Marin County at the time.
You got any info on that? Yeah.
No. Well, I met people subsequently that had relatives that were there. It was very, very sad. It scared the hell out of me, man.
Okay.
It was sort of like the Charlie Manson thing. All the good works that the socialists and the people in the middle and the people did to try to make things right went right down the tubes when that crap happens. Every time some nutcase comes out and shoots a cop in the street or runs down about 8 children at the University of Santa Barbara,
right.
Those kind of people, man, we get them all the time. The guy in New Brunswick yesterday, it just throws the whole movement backwards. How did that guy slip through the cracks? As I always ask myself, Cops said to the guy in Santa Barbara, we interviewed him, we didn't think he was dangerous. Oh, really? I'll bet you any amount of money, if I'd had a chance to interview the guy, I'd have nailed him. Because I got an eye for that kind of crap. But, they don't hire people like me because we're considered old dogs.
Gotcha. Now, there's a quote from David Crosby, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now, you have that up on your website. Harrison was no hippie, drug addict, or pothead burnout. He always looked clean. In fact, he was a trained shrink. The first time I saw him, he was wearing a seersucker suit and a bow tie and carrying an attaché case. I would venture to guess that Harrison was a CIA operative or a Saul Alinsky graduate in charge of organizing bands. Now, how'd you come across David Crosby? What connection did you have to him?
David and I hit it off right away. I was living with Bill Lesh. This was back in 72, 73, 74. After I had left Honeywell, I came out to write the book. And I started doing all this stuff about bringing people down in the band off their bad trips and trying to get them off of heroin. I got everybody off of Jerry. And David, was doing a lot of coke. And a couple of times I had to go to his house and go into the bed where he was in the bedroom there, hanging out under his bed, chasing dust bunnies. Had a couple of 45s somewhere hidden. And I said, David, you please don't shoot me, but I love you, man. Do you know how many people rely on you every day? And I have tears in my eyes right now thinking about it.
Yeah.
I just, because I was in the studio right around that time. David had a solo album. And in the solo album was Ray Slick, Phil Lesh, Jerry Garcia, Paul Kantner, 3 or 4 guys from War, 3 or 4 guys, just everybody from everywhere. And they were just the best of the best. And one night, I was allowed to be in the studio. I wasn't in the singing area of the studio, sound room, but I was able to hear it through the loudspeakers. And this circle got together and they held hands. And I think it was they had all the CSN people, including all the Stills and Knack and Graham Nash especially, all those people. And they sat around and then they stood up and they did some rehearsals and they held hands and they stood in a circle And I'm not going to sing it, but I'll remember it for the rest of my life. It said, I wonder where they are, the men who really run this land. I'd like to go up to them and give to them a piece of my mind about peace in mankind. Love is not an awful gift to give, or something along those lines. It's from that solo album. Now, the interesting thing about the solo album was 30 years later, the Pope, the one that just parted away, and not the new one, but the other guy. No, maybe it was the new guy. I forget. They said the number one album that he liked the most was David Crosby's solo album.
Yeah, it's probably the new Pope.
The new Pope.
Yeah, because I think the old Pope, I don't think he was listening to Crosby. Yeah.
Blew my mind. This new Pope is that high, that he's that enlightened. Because that was an enlightened album, man. It wasn't just a bunch of crappy people standing around saying, hey, let's be hippies. They were serious, man, and it scared me. And I said to myself, it's good to be scared about this. Because if this bunch of people ever decide to do whatever they're going to do, it's going to be hell to pay. That's how much power was in that circle at that time.
Right, and you were sort of like doing like rehab, almost like a Betty Ford, one-man traveling Betty Ford kind of thing, right?
Hello, I was the guy with the blender and the protein mix.
Okay. Because they didn't have Betty Ford when you were doing this, right?
No, but there were all kinds of rehab centers around, and they were all good. But getting somebody to go to one, it was not easy, So you had to sort of do it on the spot. It chained him down to Rock Scully came in one night at the Navarro Hotel in New York with this guy who was dressed in a tweed overcoat and a baseball hat and had a basketball for a head. And I said, well, that's not a real human. Turned out it was a nitrous oxide tank. And somebody had fallen asleep on the tank and tore a piece of flesh off from the frozen. A lot of stuff happened, man. And so, I was there to do what I could. But they didn't run it by me first. They always waited till shit hit the fan. Then I had to come up there and do something. That's sort of what it was.
Well, that's a fascinating part of your life and a fascinating time. So before
it's hard to get your chronology.
Yeah. Right. Now, do you have any other stories from that time you'd like to share before we start moving on?
Took an elevator with John Lennon.
Oh, really? Let's hear about that.
Well, I was stuck in an elevator with David Bowie for a while at the Algonquin Hotel. And we got along. I mean, I liked him. He was cool. I know who he was. See, we did a trip to the first trip to Europe, the first Grateful Dead trip to Europe, wound up at a place called Chateau Hill-Ville, which was just outside of Paris, about 22 miles northeast of Paris. And there was a big chateau there. It was a recording studio called Strawberry Studios, and it was run by a guy named Michel Magne, M-A-G-N-E, Michel Magne. And Michel was a genius, and he did a lot of, movie soundtracks and stuff. And the Dead loved the studio, so they stayed there for a while. They were supposed to go to the Glastonbury Festival, and it rained out. So they stayed there and made a record instead. But I went over to Glastonbury, and my life changed that day. I can put my finger on the day my life changed, because Glastonbury is a whole other topic. I don't want to get into it. It's too complicated, but I can tell you right now, man, Glastonbury, places like Glastonbury, Stonehenge, Brittany in France, Gulf of Morbihan, anywhere where the ancient stones are still running, operating, like computers, solar shadow casters, time clocks, stuff like that are out there that were built 4,000 years, 6,000 years ago, some of them, are really, really out there and real. Not flying saucer stuff. It's the real stuff. But I don't want to bore you with this crap right now.
No. You're not boring us, my friend. Okay, and this audience, a major part of this audience is really into the kind of stuff you're talking about. Now, okay. And that fascinates me as well. Because now you're into yeah, go ahead.
I'm one of the world's authorities on the meaning of the stones, but I've never published anything on it because my theory is so accurate. Nobody wants to believe it. So I'm going, I'm not going to fight these people. You know? But I don't want to get put in nutbag. I don't want to. No. Don't
worry. No. We're with you, man. We're with you. Now, but that's a big part of your life, is a study of these kind of things, and it's a fascinating part of your life. That it almost seems like a little left turn in your life, you know. But it's part of you, and I want to hear about it. You've studied these megalith stone structures.
Well, let me go. Yeah. Well, see, what happened was when I got to Glastonbury, I was still a buddy of Phil's, and Phil and I were still pals, and I got to Glastonbury, went to the festival, and I ran across David Bowie there. That was his first gig ever, I think. The first, big gig anyway. And I met him, and I got to know him. So 5 or 6 or 7 years later, that was 71. So 75, 76, I'm in New York at the Algonquin Hotel, and the elevator gets stuck, and here's this guy in a green jerkin and a kind of a Robin Hood outfit, and it's David. And I'm looking at him like, well, should I treat this guy like the rock star that he is, or should I just treat him like it's Phil? Or, so I decided to treat him like it was Phil, just another buddy of mine who happens to be a rock star, and he loved it. And that's the way you really want to talk to these people, because everybody else, I'm in the elevator with David Bowie. I'm saying, we might be in here for a half an hour. I may not do anything screwed up, So I tried to be buddy-buddy with him, and it worked out real good. And I get to hear a lot of stuff about David. And another time I was in the Navarro, and John Lennon came over to see Geffen, David Geffen.
Okay.
There's a character. You don't want to say anything bad about David Geffen, no matter what, even if it's remotely related to anything. So if I say the word David Geffen, cut it out of the tape.
Okay.
Okay. Now we can move on.
Okay.
Self-centering. He's the most powerful rat on the planet. And very, very intelligent, very, very powerful, brilliant genius, which makes him 8 times more dangerous than a not-so-brilliant genius,
Okay, 1 second. Now, your audio is dropping off a little bit. Wait, your audio is dropping off. Can you...
Right.
There you go. That's better.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay,
back into the mic.
Good. No more Geffen. No more Geffen chat.
David who? I have no idea who you're talking about. Okay.
Exactly. He's sort of fading in my memory, too.
So now you met John Lennon. What was that like?
Yeah. I just said hi to him. I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but I got to see him, and he looked really healthy.
Okay.
Really, really healthy. I got the healthy vibe off the aura,
Okay.
But as you're standing close to somebody, you can get their aura,
Yeah, I actually have May Pang. I have May Pang scheduled to come on around September, and we're going to be going into all that kind of John Lennon stuff as well. But
I couldn't have been her. I mean, I loved her. I never met her, but I knew who she was. And I thought, holy cow, this guy's got good taste,
Yeah, she seems really cool too. She's in, but I want to get into, because we got a couple of minutes before we take a break, and I'm going to read some commercials. So now, give us the stuff. You were about to get into Stonehenge and the megalith stone monuments. Okay. Go ahead. What do you got on there? Tell us. Teach us.
So in 1971, pouring down rain, rental car, brand new Rover, TC 2000 Rover. Coming down the road, and I look over to the right. It's supposed to go to Glastonbury, and I'm coming down the road, and there's this mound. It's about 600 feet high, and on top of it is this castle type of thing, tower, and the vibe from it almost blew me out of the seat. I said, what in the hell is that? I was hanging out with a guy named John Michel at the time. Anybody's ever heard of John Michel? He's a fabulous writer, the great genius of our generation. He died about 5 years ago. Very, very brilliant writer. He wrote The View Over Atlantis and several other great books. You can look him up online. He's just amazing. He has a website, Michelle, John Michel. He was a pal of mine for a long time, smoked a lot of hash with John. And John said, your writing is very, very good. And I said, well, I want to get better. Who should I go study under? And he said, go look up Dame Frances Yates at the Warburg Institute. She loves Americans. So I did. That's another part of the story. I went to see Dame Yates, and she loved me. And she got me an internship at the Warburg Institute, and I finished up a postgraduate program there. I never did get an official degree from the Warburg, but Don't worry. You read my books, you'll know I went to the Rivera. So, make a long story short, I come into Glastonbury, and there it is. And then it says festival this way. And so we get to Worthy Farm, and it's completely sloshed out. And almost every year it sloshes out and floods, you know. And all these English freaks just completely stoned. And a little teeny pyramid thing there, and the dead said, and I wrote back, we had telex in those days, and I told Bill and Jerry, I said, don't come, you'll never, you know, it's good, but it's wet, it's not dry. And so that was my thing, is to tell them not to come to the Glastonbury Festival. They went ahead and contributed several soundtrack tracks to the Glastonbury Festival, the first Glastonbury Festival album. But they weren't there. They weren't at Glastonbury. They were recorded in France and sent over later. It's a pretty good deal, though. So I got my mind blown in there, man. I realized what that was. And this mound that this tower is on top of it is a labyrinth. It was featured in the Olympics recently, by the way.
Yeah.
And that's the mound. And now the English people are going, oh, hey, this is really important, huh? Duh. Yeah, is the Statue of Liberty important? Yes. Oh, how old is this? Oh, probably about 4,000, 5,000 years old. Oh, okay, well, maybe we better feature this thing. So they're getting around, the young people are finally getting around, we do have a heavy, very heavy background, but we need to cherish it and study it and worship it a little more than we used to, than the old people did, you know. And so that's one of the things that I saw happen as I went there when it was just starting out in the halls of freakdom, as it were, and has now evolved into some pretty serious and very realistic tourist trade, shall we say.
Yeah, but you were saying that when you saw this thing, you got a vibe off it, right? Now, this is the vibe you felt.
Oh, yeah. Baby, you can't go there without getting the vibe.
Some
can't
people
go
can.
there without just...
I think some people are dead to that kind of thing. But now you felt something in your body. You felt a physical.
Yeah. Well, I'm I'm a sensitive guy.
Yeah, me too.
You know, you're right. You know, I'm like a water dowser. You know, I can feel the water and stuff. I can see auras and stuff. But you know, if I tell people that, they say, "Oh, you're schizophrenic." I don't. You know, so I don't really. Thank God for you interviewing me, because before I take the bucket, I'm going to tell people I have the sensitivity. I never called myself a mystic. I never called myself enlightened or anything like that. But I'm just talking about my feelings, and this is what I felt, you know. And a lot of people do feel it. So if you go up this labyrinth on the side of this hill, you get to the top, you can see the Vale of Avalon, which is the Glastonbury Plain, and you realize that there was something there 4,000 years ago. A whole civilization was there 4,000 years ago. It's now almost completely buried. And the English government doesn't really want to accept anything more than the fact that the mound itself is still there, a bunch of cows running around on it. But the truth is, if you go back far enough, you will, and read the books and see the real stuff, not the crapo, wacko, flying saucer people stuff, but the real stuff, the real archaeology, the real anthropology. You will see that it's a very, very amazing place at one time.
Now, you've also written books on that as well, because I know you've written books about like the Templars and the Holy Grail and all kind of stuff. Have you written books about these topics as well? Yeah.
Well, I have a writing partner named Katherine Hauten from Singapore, and she and I wrote a book called Arthur the God, about King Arthur becoming a god and how he became a kind of a bogus fantasy. Never really existed, but they had a grave built for him anyway. And we found out who was in the grave. We found out where the grave was. And the grave is located, and if you go to Glastonbury, you can see this grave. There's a plaque there where the grave was. And the point where the two lines, the major ley lines cross is right at that grave. And so it's kind of a giveaway. And then on the tower, it goes up to the tower. So you can see a map, the line, the Molinas line, and the Arthur and Mary line, dragon line goes right through that spot. And I mean, the spot's about 2 feet by 3 feet. And the whole Earth, it's an Earth point, a heavy magnetic Earth point right there. But there was never anybody important. Well, what it was, actually, it turned out a king. I won't give it away because you got to go look at the book. But there was a king and a woman buried in there, and they became known as King Arthur and Queen Guinevere, but they weren't really called that when they went into the grave.
Gotcha.
So we had to fix. That was the first book. Then subsequently, for about 20 years, I've been writing the center book, and I could never get the hang of it until we got the Archer the God book finished, and I realized, oh, the guy who invented King Arthur in that grave was the Bishop of Winchester, who was a Da Vinci-like figure with an IQ beyond anybody's, normal IQ, like 200 or whatever, like Tom Constantin or something, and Bill and those guys. And I was always a low IQ guy. I mean, I have 128 or something like that, but I have a photographic memory, so I was always able to keep up with those guys, And so anytime somebody came along, even if it was 1,000 years ago, I can tell that there was some serious stuff going on there. And so the Bishop of Winchester, whose name was Henri de Blois, was a kind of a prankster, and he decided he wanted to invent this Arthurian propaganda for future generations. And so I wrote another book called Crown of Stars, which is the real heavy book for those of you who are into medieval mysteries. It's sort of like a modern mystery, only it's set in medieval nonfiction rather than fiction. All footnotes are in there. And I nailed it. I found that he wrote a book. The book's called Perlusvaus, or The High History of the Holy Grail. And it's always been known as an anonymous book. They can never figure out who wrote it. I nailed it. I proved it. I'm sure of it. And you can talk me out of it if you try to talk me out of it if you want, but nobody's been able to argue with me about it because I got too much data now heading my direction scientifically to not say pretty much conclusively that if he didn't write it, he caused it to be written by one of his close buddies. So I'm going to say he wrote it. And it's called The High History of the Holy Grail. It was the origin of the Grail. The whole idea of King Arthur and the Round Table pretty much came out of that circle. There's a think tank at Glastonbury in about 1125, 1126 to 1170 when he died. That 50-year period, that's when it all happened right there.
Okay, now people are into that kind of stuff, okay? And it's obvious, you know your stuff. Where would they find those books if they wanted to read up on that whole library of books you've written on those topics?
Write me. I will send you a free copy.
Okay.
Anybody that writes, I'll send them either a free copy if they want to send a couple of bucks. My dogs can use some dog food. I got cats. We rescue horses. But, if you don't have the bread, it's okay. I'll send it to you. I got the whole thing on PDF. You have to read it on the screen, but I'll send it so you can print it out, and you can have a hard copy. It costs about $40. Cost me $40 to print it anyway, so I'll send it to you free. It's got pictures. It's illustrated. It's finished. They're all finished. All 3 books are finished. So, you can have any of the, those 3. You can have Love Kills. As far as dead books are concerned, those you can still buy those. And there's another book on the market you can get called The Cauldron and the Grail, which is out in hardback, and you can get that through Amazon too. Or write me, and I'll make sure you get one.
So
that'll cost some money.
You can write. I'm going to give your email address, right? zendog@gmail.com.
Right.
Yeah, Zendog, D-O-G-G, 2 G's, Z-E-N-D-O-G-G.
Right,
yeah.
One word, Zendog, yeah, that's it. That's my guy right there. Yeah.
All right, man. Now, I got one more question for you, and then I want to do some live commercials. Now, when you were doing all this stuff, traveling around, and you're getting here, you're getting there, you're running into John Lennon, you're running into David Bowie. What'd you say? He was wearing what kind of an outfit you called it?
Oh, it sort of looked like a kind of a medieval troubadour kind of outfit, green.
Okay, so you're running around, you're doing all this stuff, you're traveling all over. How were you financing that?
I was very lucky. My dad died.
Okay, well, yeah, what you say? Yeah.
He left me some money, and I was lucky because the Dead books were both selling at the time, and I was getting royalties for the 2 Grateful Dead books, and they were doing pretty well. I was selling. Of course, remember in those days the economy, 50 cents you could still buy a loaf of bread.
Right. Yeah, it was a whole it was a whole different world where you could actually live and enjoy your life as well instead of living like a slave like we do nowadays.
Yeah, there wasn't so many expenses for the internet and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to read some commercials. I'm going to take a little break and read some commercials. If you want to get some water or have a quick cigarette or something like that, I'll just get started here. Tonight. What was that?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. So tonight's show is brought to you by our sponsors, Columbia Paranormal. You can find Columbia Paranormal on their Facebook page, Columbia Paranormal. They're a team of professionals conducting investigations into possible paranormal activity. Investigations are done in complete confidence, and reports are given to the end at the end of each investigation. Now, if you think you have a paranormal occurrence, contact them for an appointment at email hjkrol59@gmail.com. All investigations are always free of charge. This is a free service for the purpose of documenting paranormal activity, and join them on Facebook. Now, you can reach Columbia Paranormal at 573-489-5337. And once again, their email is hjkrol59. Another one of our sponsors is Pacific West Bamboo. Pacific West Bamboo, you can find them on Facebook. Pacific West Bamboo is your #1 source for timber construction and craft-grade bamboo poles, plants, and products. They specialize in eco-friendly reclaimed wood products for the home or the garden. They're located in Portland, Oregon, and they've been servicing the Northwest for over 10 years. They can be reached at 503-839-8126, and their Facebook page is Pacific West Bamboo. You can email them at demrootz@oppermail.com, DEMROOTZ@oppermail.com, and they can and do ship nationwide. Also, don't forget the Opperman Report. You can always support us with a PayPal donation at oppermanreport@gmail.com, or by buying Ed's book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, or visiting Ed's website, emailrevealer.com. We have a brand new sponsor called InfinityHomePlans.com. Now check out Infinity Home Plans and Design Services, your resource for 3D, 2D architectural services, and they offer a multitude of products, including stock home plans, 2D digital drawing sets, 3D models and renderings, and more. And we have tonight as our guest, we have Hank Harrison, a fascinating guy. His websites are I have to find him here.
www.
HankHarrison.com is one. Another one is eponfarms.com. EPONAFARM.com. Hey, Epona Farms, what do you do there? Now, you do like horse training and stuff?
We rescue. Sorry.
Don't choke.
I'm choking. What kind of yogurt, bud? Vanilla. And then is there after tablets? Is that or something else? We rescue horses. And then she evaluates them, and then she trains them to work with kids. And then she turns around and either sells the horses, or occasionally she'll keep them, and the good ones for kids. And she trains kids how to ride. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you pretty good. Why don't you catch your breath, and I'll just do a little bit more. I'll mention your websites and stuff while you catch your breath there, because I know. Oh, by the way, Hank, you're good. Okay, because Hank Harrison just got out of the hospital this week. He had to go in for some procedure there, and thank God he's okay, because this guy's a brilliant guy, a lot of information, and just a fascinating life. And I want to thank you again, Hank, for coming on tonight. So now, Hank, whenever I was mentioning that I was going to have Hank Harrison on this week, the first thing that everybody wants to talk about is Courtney Love, because you're the father of Courtney Love.
Biological.
Right. And it also seems that the one place that people seem to know you the best from, which is a shame, because we just spent a whole almost an hour discussing your life and all your accomplishments, okay? But people seem to recognize your name most from the Nick Broomfield documentary, Who Killed Kurt Cobain. How do you feel the way? That's your most recognition you think you've gotten?
Well, I wrote it, so I got nobody to blame but myself. Nick took the idea, rewrote it, put it in his own context, stuck his narcissistic self into it a lot, and decided to do it his way. Now, I must admit, he did it better than I could have done it, because that's what Nick does. And I knew it, but what Nick didn't know was that I had heard of him because of an earlier film that he did, which blew my mind. And so when he came along to interview me, he thought I didn't know who he was. And I knew he was a saboteur. I knew he was one of these guys that shows up with a camera already rolling, you know?
Right. Now, how do you feel? How do you think you were treated in that documentary?
Oh, Nick's a good guy. Nick's a cool guy. I'm not worried about it at all. He's very aggressive on camera and very sweet and diplomatic off camera, so that's cool. I wasn't offended at all. I was really happy that I got some screen time, and I got my 6 bits worth in. And there's one scene, anybody that watches it, there's one scene that I put in there, and I knew he'd leave it in because he didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I manipulated the whole thing, and I knew if I got by him on this particular one scene, the rest of the more cognoscenti, the real people that watch these things, not just the Cobain fans, but the real hip film buffs, will see it and say, oh, we get it, okay? And that is exactly what happened. And here's the scene. Somewhere in the middle of the movie, a Lincoln, here comes a Lincoln Continental town car down the driveway. Nick's in there driving, and the camera woman is in there filming already. And I saw the red light was on.
Yeah.
So I knew this was going to be my chance, because they're thinking they're sabotaging me. They're thinking they're jumping on me. Actually, I was ready for him. He goes up and he says, how you doing? I says, oh, so remember this line real carefully. When you see the DVD, you'll see it. Oh, cinema verite, I see. I stuck my head in the window and I said, oh, cinema verite, I see. He didn't know what I was saying. But the other people that do know what cinema verite is knows that it means cinema of truth. And I knew what that meant. Sent the signal to all the filmmakers out there that I'm no joke. And I was happy I got that in. There's nobody can get that in, that credit.
Yeah, I noticed. I just rewatched it today, getting ready for this interview. I was watching it this afternoon, and I remember that scene. Okay.
Oh, cinema verite. And he didn't even know what the hell I was talking about, hardly. So I said, okay, here we go. And so, to the extent that he sort of blusters his way around a lot, he is a good filmmaker, and he's subsequently proven it with, coming close to winning an Academy Award, if not won one, I think, or something. He's done terrific work, and you can't bad rap him, and it makes me look good because he made a good movie.
Yeah, I've had some dealings with Nick myself, with my client, Shirley Tripp, in that story he did about Sarah Palin. And I had some dealings with Nick myself, yeah. I love his work, and I love that movie, the Kurt and Courtney movie, Who Killed Kurt Cobain, yeah. And now how does the birth of Courtney Love fit into this whole story? When you're traveling around doing all this stuff, how does that fit in time-wise?
I was madly in love with her mother. We had a great love affair. She was a Roman Catholic, but absolutely terrific personality. Great. I went for brains in those days, the looks were also good. And I had just had a child and lost it, and they took the baby away and adopted him. And incidentally, he's a pal of mine now. We found each other, so that was good too. But in those days, and so Linda got pregnant. Okay. So because they were Catholic, there certainly was no idea of having an abortion. So, and I didn't want it anyway. Neither I wanted to have a baby. So we had the baby, and Courtney was the baby. And I loved her until she was about 5, and they took her away from me because I was being too much of an influence. Turns out the father-in-law, who was soon to depart the mortal coil, to quote a Monty Python line, he's a dead parent, was really down on me because I was managing the Grateful Dead, and I was starting to just start finishing up the LSD rescue thing at the same time. So he thought, and he passed this rumor around that he was afraid I was going to give him the baby LSD, So subsequently, I took on the website, by the way, I took a lie detector test at my own expense. And if you want to see the entire results of the lie detector It's on the website, and it proves without any doubt that I did not give my baby LSD at the age of 3 or 4. That was all put up later to cast any doubts upon anything I said about Kurt, because Courtney knows that I know. She knows what she did when she lived with us. She knows the kind of activities she was involved in when she lived with us.
Well, let's slow down a bit here, because you want to know what? I have to apologize to you, because I repeated that rumor that you gave Courtney a love LSD when she was 3 years old. Now, where did I hear that from originally? Because I thought that was true.
It's an urban myth, man. It's a complete urban, I wouldn't, obviously I deny it now if I did do it, but what I did was I hired a really good CIA, San Francisco police lie detector expert, forensics expert, and I have it on my website, and I will send you a copy. Anybody that wants it, just write in, and I'll give them a copy, or they can go online and download it. It's on hankharrison.com, and it says polygraph.
Okay, now where did I hear that from? Did I hear that in the Nick Broomfield documentary and it was cut out?
No, you heard it from Courtney Love's people.
Okay.
You heard it from all the people that think Courtney Love is the greatest thing that ever lived.
That's interesting.
You heard it from people who want to bad rap me. They want to bad rap me and put me down. And what better way to do it than to paint me as some kind of wacko psychopath? I must have lost $2 or $3 million over that. Because all of a sudden, as soon as that started being circulated, I couldn't get any of my books out. Because New York, all the lesbians in New York and all the people that love Courtney and everybody else in New York just thinks, well, that's got to be true.
Gotcha. Okay, well then I apologize to you because I thought that was true. I thought there was some kind of reality to that. I apologize. Okay, but now
don't change your mind yet. Wait a minute. Don't apologize yet.
Well, now let's
go to the website, read the polygraph, then apologize.
Okay. So now let's get back to this. Now, back to the birth of Courtney Love. Now, Courtney Love was born at a time when you were traveling around with the Grateful Dead and stuff and doing all that stuff in the elevators?
Before. Slightly before.
Okay, slightly before. Okay, and you were married to her mother? You were married to her mother?
Absolutely married.
Then you two got
legally
divorced.
Married.
You two got divorced, and there was a
well, you see, they were pretty arch-Catholic, so what they did, in addition to the divorce, was they made me sign this paper that said you can see Courtney all you want as long as you sign this paper for religious purposes, because Linda wants to be re-virginized, and she wants to annul the wedding as the marriage as well as divorce. So I said, well, that was to make the old grandma and grandpa happy, and Jack Reese. So I signed the paper like an idiot, and my lawyer told me don't do it, and I did it anyway. And I signed it, and as soon as they managed to annul the wedding, they took Courtney away to Oregon, and then subsequently to New Zealand. I never saw her again. And I'm living in Sausalito making bucks and commuting all the way down to Lockheed every day. And I'm kind of sad. One day I get a letter, Hank, come and see me. It's Courtney. I said, holy Christ. Turns out she was in juvenile hall in Oregon the whole time.
Okay.
So I hired Phil Siebert to take his private plane, and we went up to Salem, and we sat there and for 2 days, and then at a later time I drove up there too.
Let me ask you a question too. Now, wasn't there something as well about that Courtney had some kind of trust fund that people were after?
Courtney?
Yeah.
Courtney?
Yeah.
Jack Reese was the founder of a thing called Ferrari and Reese Opticians, and they were so wealthy, and they eventually wound up buying several optical chains, including Franklin and some other ones. But they had Ferrari and Reese, which is right on Union Square. So what happened was Jack got started in the Second World War by doing Navy glasses for sailors and Marines, and he was a good little lens grinder, and he started his own business, and next thing you know, he has satellite stock, he has gold bullion, he's loaded with bucks. He's taking me down, and Linda, we're going down to the top restaurants in town, and this guy's got the bus, and his pals has the bus. All his pals have the bus.
Hold on, Hank. The break showed up early. I apologize to you. The break showed up a couple of minutes early. So we're going to have this is that long break I was telling you about when you can go have a cup of coffee and smoke a cigarette and do all that kind of stuff. We'll be right back
after. Can I hug my wife?
What was that?
I'm going to hug my wife.
There you go, my friend. Yeah, plug back in. Now, we're with Hank Harrison, fascinating guy. He's the father of Courtney Love. He was the psychologist for the Grateful Dead. He was like a drug counselor for these kind of people, bringing people down from acid trips. Incredible college education. Traveled around the world, met a lot of famous rock stars and stuff like that. Wrote all these books, incredible books about stuff that's way above my education, I can tell you that. You can find his Grateful Dead books on the Opperman Report blog. We're going to be right back after this with more of Hank. Welcome back to the Opperman Report. Every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Then rebroadcast Monday night, 6 p.m. on awakeradio.us and awakeradio.uk. We're also simulcast cjmarsradio.com and 365 Live. We'll be broadcasting to the after shows live on cjmarsradio.com. Also, I want to remind everybody that freedomslips.com is a listener-sponsored radio station, so if you like what you're hearing, you like hearing Hank Harrison, which is a real solid guest, I think, my friends, you have to go to freedomslips.com and click on the donate button. Oh, boy. Oh, one more thing I want to get into real quick before we get back to our guest, Hank Harrison from hankharrison.com, author of the book... Oh, I'll find it. But anyway, one thing is we have a GoFundMe.com crowdsource funding thing going on right now, trying to build an Opperman Report studio fund. So if you go to GoFundMe.com and put in search for Opperman Report Studio Fund, we're trying to build up the studio and actually get some video on here and improve the sound quality and get a microphone and stuff like that. So if you like what you're hearing, and you want to hear better sound quality, go to GoFundMe.com and search for Opperman Report Studio Fund. So Hank Harrison, man, you're back.
Yeah.
Okay, man.
Hey, I'm making a deal, Ed. Here's the deal. One thing I like about free radio is this. I tell you what, I don't charge anything for the books. I'll charge $4 for the book. You keep the money, and I'll just go ahead and ship it.
Okay, we'll figure something out. We'll work something out, but everybody go to the Opperman Report blog. I got links to some of his books on there that you can get through Amazon. These other books, I'm going to make sure that we can get descriptions on that blog, and we can work something out. If he wants to support the station, that's great, because I really like Hank Harrison. Hank, one question we got while we're on the break. I got it from one of my regular callers, and it was about this stuff about how you testify as an expert witness in ritual homicides and suicides and stuff. Now, how'd you get involved in that?
Well, it's kind of interesting, too. I was fascinated by a lot of this mass murder and cult murders, and you asked a question earlier about Jim Jones down in South America and stuff, and how people become so seduced into doing this kind of crap, the Manson thing. I knew Ginny and Sandy Good. And Sandy Good to this day is married to Charlie Manson.
Right.
And so I never met Charlie on the streets, but I'd heard about him, and I knew that the Good sisters were way out there. So, and I was in love with Ginny for a long time, Virginia. So people are still writing me about her, by the way. And I miss her. And my wife knows it. You know, she's not jealous. She's sitting right here. The thing about so I got fascinated with the witchcraft thing and people doing rituals, homicides, and people leaving pentacles and things at the crime scenes and stuff, and whether or not, you know, and Antoine LaVey and that whole thing. And I just, I wanted to see it, so I started studying it for a couple of years, and sure enough, I came up with some interesting insights about the ritualist aspect of it. And I was going to write a book about that too, but it just got too heavy. I can still do it, but it's very heavy.
Yeah.
Topic. Anybody wants a book? If anybody wants a book on that, let me know. I got the stuff. It's ready to go. Anyway.
It's a heavy topic, and that's a topic that we talk about all the time on this show. Now, one of the things I had a guest on.
Homicide?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Satanic crimes, satanic cults, the Process Church, Charlie Manson. These are all topics we talk about every week. Okay.
Well, I heard your show, and I haven't heard that particular thing, but the thing is, some of them are fake. Some of them are just what's known as schizophrenic affect, where they think that they're crazy, or they act crazy because they think they're crazy, and they're really not crazy. They're really psychopaths. And then there's other people that are seriously demented and actually believe in this stuff and actually have images of things appearing out of nowhere, and, you know, the lion killed the lady next door, or the ray gun hit the peach and then bounced off the peach and killed the lady next door, and so forth. You know, that kind of magical thinking, and I got fascinated by it because it's distinctly different from real witchcraft. And they did on the ass of a hole in the ground about real witchcraft, white witchcraft, or healing craft, or even Wicca. So none of this stuff. You won't see a Wicca killing anybody. You won't see a white witch killing anybody. It's just people that are demented, you know. So I got this case history, about 7 of them together, and I started lecturing. And as I lectured, the cops started giving me their cases.
Gotcha.
And I got them on tape. To this day, I have several of these things on cassettes of confessions of these people and stuff, some of which are very highly publicized, and some were unknown, but they all seem to fit this hypothesis that I have, which is you have to read the book to find it, and it's a kind of complicated hypothesis, but it's true, I'm sure, and it has to do with the motivational factors and blaming it on everybody else. So, yeah, I did that, and I got fascinated by it, and then as soon as I realized that I went to Vegas for a while, and I worked for the Las Vegas Sun for about 2 years. I was madly in love with a girl down there, and that didn't work out. So I came back and went to Europe, and I wanted to move to Europe forever and ever. And instead, I got homesick. Hey, all you Americans out there, yeah, those people who think they're going to be in exile, you get lonely for the old sod, this side. And so I came back and got back to work, and I knew I had enough information to keep me busy. And then the internet came along, and of course, that was my ride out. That was my rocket ship right there.
Okay, I got a couple questions for you. I had a guest last week, like I said, who was from San Francisco, and familiar with the crime stuff, and he said that he had friends who knew Courtney Love in San Francisco. And what he said is that Courtney Love attended the Presidio Middle School. Is that true?
She might have. She's actually from, the mother went to USF and to the high school right next to the University of San Francisco, which is a Catholic school. San Francisco Middle School, and what that isn't really anything. That means grade. It doesn't give me the specific name of the specific school. It just gives me the grade level. Middle school would be 7.
Yeah, 6th and 7th grade.
Yeah.
But yeah. What caught my attention though was he said it was the Presidio Middle School. And are you familiar with the allegations of sexual ritual, a satanic ritual abuse going on at the Presidio military base in the preschool?
Actually, I heard about that, but I never put it together in my head until just this minute. Thanks for the paranoid carload.
Well, I apologize. We're trying to get this stuff out, trying to see what's going on.
Now I got to go down there. Now I got to research that, you big.
Good. Do it, and we're going to have.
There we are.
We're going to have you back on.
What a way to start a friendship.
I know, man.
What a way to start a friendship, huh?
We're going to have you back on. We're going to get into all this stuff. Are you familiar with a book by an author named Dave McGowan called Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon?
No.
Okay. Okay, well, you're not, but he has a whole theory about how a lot of these rock stars in the canyon, Laurel Canyon, like David Crosby and these guys, all had kind of a military background in their family, and that almost that this whole entire wave of music and culture and dress might have been some kind of a government psyop operation. Have you ever considered anything like that?
Absolutely, but slightly different venue. But I can tell you right now that Courtney lived for at least 2 years, from 1980 to 83. She commuted back and forth from LA to our house and to wherever else she could stay when she got her money from a trust fund up in in the San Francisco area or Menlo Park, she would go back down to L.A. to stay in Topanga Canyon across the street from the, actually with the woman who was the very, very close friend, called girlfriend of, who did Straw Dogs? The editor of Straw, the guy that produced Straw Dogs.
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Peckinpah, Sam Peckinpah.
Right.
He went and lived at Sam Peckinpah's ranch for at least 2 years back and forth. And I won't tell you who that was, but Courtney. And she had an affair because Courtney turned kind of AC/DC about that time. And she had an affair with this young guy's mother. And it turned out that the guy, I won't give you his name right now because he wrote me and said, please don't do any publicity associating me with Courtney. All right. His work is so terrific. He's in about 17 movies you've seen. He is not in them. He's a set designer for all these incredibly top popular movies right now. And I knew him when he didn't have that job. And I'm so proud of him, you know. And I'm so proud he managed to get rid of Courtney off his back because he had some bad karma going there too with her. And he wound up joining the Hare Krishna and worked at Kinko's Coffee Center in San Francisco last time I saw him. And
okay,
now
let's get back to Courtney though. Now you had her, you were living with her till she was 3 years old. The mother takes off to Portland, Oregon, then New Zealand. Then you get a letter. She's in a reform school.
She's 13 when I get the letter.
Okay, so then you go down and you go see her.
Went up to see her. Got permission to go in there. I adopted her back. She got back. She signed it. Everybody signed the paper. So she was my daughter before she turned 18.
So now the mother just couldn't control her anymore, couldn't handle her.
Well, that's what she says. But I mean, Courtney was, heck, you know, you talk to me for an hour, you know. But anyway, the mother and Courtney didn't get along, and the new boyfriend's mother had, much as I love her and respect her, she did have 4 or 5 new husbands after she left me. So a total of about 6 husbands altogether. The current guy, I think, is the boyfriend. But anyway, she's written a couple books, and she's really, very good. And it turned out, genetically, Courtney's grandmother, but her genetic grandmother is a Pulitzer Prize winner.
Really?
Paula Fox. Look it up. Paulafox. That's Courtney's grandmother.
Okay. Now.
So anyway, Courtney. So we get to see them. We get up to the juvenile hall. They let her out. I go take her out, and she says she wants to come and live with me. Okay, I'll cut through the bad stuff. And we finally got her down to San Francisco. I was living in Sausalito at the time. I had a nice houseboat. Living on a houseboat, and she says, I want to. I sat her down one night. I said, Courtney, I don't know why you're in juvenile hall. I got her out actually, but why you were in juvenile hall? And she said, because Mom says there's no money. I said, there's millions of dollars out there in your name. She said, no, Mom said the money's all gone. So I got outraged, and I made a giant mistake. And folks, if you ever want to get revenge by hurting another person, and don't do it because it's going to kick back on you. Here's the deal. I said, okay, well, I so happen to know out of my dead contacts in San Francisco that one of the girls that works at Wells Fargo Bank is one of Courtney's estate accountants, estate advisors. So I made an appointment with Wells Fargo, took her over to San Francisco. She went in rags, and I tried to buy her clothes. She didn't want me to buy her any fake Macy's clothes. She wanted whatever it was, grunge stuff, and I didn't have the money to buy that because I couldn't. Anyway, I got her in the bank. She goes in there for about a half an hour. She comes out, and she's ashy. And I said, what happened? She said, I am a millionaire. I got about $3.5 million in the bank. Okay, this was 76. So you can do about triple that. So it looked like she had like 7 or 8 million when she was 13.
Right.
14. So she went, instead of saying, okay, thanks, Hank, she said, screw you, man. I'm going to cut out. I'm going to get emancipated. So she went to her lawyer, got emancipated, and sued her mother. And the mother came through with about $20,000 a quarter for about $80,000 a year, something like that. In those days, Okay, she comes to Ireland and lives with me for a while. That worked out okay. Now she wanted to go and hang out with rock stars in Liverpool. That worked out okay. So we took off and came back to the States. She comes back to the States. She still wants to come and live with us. She tracks me down in Menlo Park, where I'm now working as an editor for Dr. Dobbs' journal. It's a software journal. And InfoWorld, also InfoWorld magazine, and a couple others. I'm writing. That's what I want to do. So she shows up. It's 1984. She's living in Topanga Canyon, and she turns into this kind of wacky, crazy person that had nothing to do with the way I raised her or even any way her mother raised her. So somewhere between the time I got her out of juvie, which was like 76, I guess, and the time, about 84, 83, the time that they were starting to form Babes in Toyland, Sugar Babylon, Sugar Babies, that group, in that period of time, she started doing heroin. And that changed the whole thing, scared the hell out of, she went to live with a girl that we were living with for a while. And I call her Francie Marson because I don't want to give her a real name. She's still alive, and she's a very dangerous person. She's the one who got me interested in ritual homicide, by the way, way back when. So I could tell you another story about that, but it's off the point. So, now Courtney's acting really strange, and I can't figure it out. So we just started moving. We sold the house in Menlo Park and moved to Los Altos, and we hid out from there the whole time. And then the next thing you know, she marries Cobain.
Okay, well, hold on a second. Now, she was 13. She finds out she has about $3 million, and she goes right away. She emancipated herself at what age?
Well, when she found out that, I'd say she was about 15 and a half, going on 16, and then she got the money, started getting the money coming in when she was 18 or so.
Wow. Okay, and then she got addicted to drugs after that. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Now,
but that gave her a taste for big bucks. She wants to always have big bucks. She learned, this is good. Being rich is good. I like being rich. So, she just would spin, and then she found out that in movies the royalties stopped, but in rock and roll the royalties just keep on going. So she went to the movies for a while for her own vanity, and then she was pretty good. And then next thing you know, she starts her own rock band, and she marries a guy that's going to have royalties forever. And Nirvana makes 25 cents per airplane per market, 20 times a day per market. So added up, it's a couple $1 million a day. Who knows? No, that's not true. It's a couple thousand a day for sure. Just on spills like a Teen Spirit alone. So, and she used to get that money, and then the good news was my granddaughter sued her, just like she sued her mother.
Yeah.
And won. And so now Francis gets all the money for most of it, and that's the way it should be, because that's what Kurt wanted. So I'm sorry I didn't answer your question, but
no, we're doing good. We're doing good. We're getting a lot of information out there, okay? And we have plenty of time. So now, was she wealthy? Did she have any of that money left when she marries Cobain?
Not really. It sort of got shot down to a really minimum flow. And then when the Vanity Fair article came out, she might have had some of it to begin with, probably a semi-annual payment. But don't forget, the payments didn't increase. They just sort of stayed the same, and the economy went all around it, so the money didn't go as far as it used to,
Gotcha.
So we're living on there has been, if you're living on a 1983 year, in a 1963 trust fund. So she cashed that in, and her mother told her she didn't have any more money left, and there was no way she could check it, so she just took what she could and started making money herself. But she did get the bug to have the big bucks.
Yeah, she never actually had a regular job. It was always some kind of artistic endeavor, bands and stuff like that.
Well, no. She had a lot of great jobs. They were strippers. She did go-go dance and strippers in the clubs. She admits that in her own autobiographies or semi-autobiographies.
So even though she had this income, even though she had some income, she still had to make more money and had to actually work as a stripper. Was her drug habit?
Yeah. Well, I will say this. She was a waitress for a while, and she also did bicycle delivery work in San Francisco. I was driving down the road one day, and there's my daughter on a bicycle. I'm going, uh-huh. So I pulled her over. I said, what's going on? She said, I'm working for delivery service now. I said, why? You don't need to do that. She said, I'm keeping my legs in shape for dancing at night. So that's how that happened.
Okay, now during this period of time, still though, your relationship was rocky, back and forth with your daughter here. Even though you got her out of jail, people usually really appreciate it when you get them out of jail. But it was the drug.
Well, I was because I'm disappointing. I disappointed the hell out of her because I was, flirting around with chicks. I wasn't married at the time. I had a couple of girlfriends. She didn't agree with them. She didn't like them. Other things, it's disappointing, Dad. I just didn't live up to any kind of rock star expectations at all. And I didn't have, in her mind, I didn't have the image that could be promoted into the heavens of rock stardom or whatever the hell she was visualizing at the time. So I fell pretty short.
Now, what was the relationship like with her biological mother and her various stepdads?
Well, various stepdads were just guys that were sort of rowing the boat. They weren't really this. Linda has 150 IQ.
Right.
And now she has a master's degree, and she knows Linda's a genius. Courtney got all of her really high IQ stuff from her mother's side. It's obvious. I mean, I'm brilliant, but I'm not that brilliant. And, 128 and 150 is the difference between living in Jersey and living in, the Hamptons.
Yeah.
It's not the same. And Linda has written several books, and she's very, very good. I'm not going to say anything bad about her.
Right. How's Courtney's relationship with her now?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Now,
probably about the same as it is with me. I don't know.
Did Courtney have any formal education?
Well, now that's an interesting question. No. The answer is flatly no, but she attended classes at the Art Institute a couple of times and called it a bachelor's degree. Then she went with me to Ireland for a while. I used to go downtown. She said, I want to go to Trinity. So I'd take her by Trinity, and she audited a couple of classes there. I gave her at least a PhD. She audited 2 classes and gave herself a PhD in something. I don't know what it was. And so now she goes back to Ireland, and she has all this money. She goes back to Ireland and buys herself an honorary doctorate or something from Dublin, and she must have paid a lot of money for that. But no, she doesn't have any formal education of any kind, and I don't even think she finished her high school equivalency. I'm not even sure she doesn't need to. I mean, she's so educated on her own that she has my photographic memory and her mother's IQ. So, and who knows what. And my dad's athleticism. My dad was in the 36 Olympics, by the way.
Really?
But genetically, I mean, you want to look at a genetic freak. That's the gene pool right there.
Yeah, it's fascinating. There was something in this woman has driven her to ambition, even with these drug addictions, alleged drug addictions. I guess she admits to, but there's some driving ambition. Now, you're a psychologist. What do you think that is?
Her mother told her she'd never be anything.
Oh, you think so?
I heard her. I know it.
No, but you think that's the cause. That's your diagnosis.
Well, if it's not the cause, it's certainly the trigger.
Okay.
In addition to being put, well, of course, the other thing I got to tell you is my own fault. When she was with me from the time I got her out of juvie till the time she went to London and the time she took off and which would have been about, I took off actually 79, so 3 years or 4 years I had her there in Sausalito, was working full time. I was giving her nothing but reinforcement. Just you're great, you're wonderful, you're cool,
right.
Every day. And I got her. I think it helped to ambitionize her a little bit, which is okay. Ambition, there's nothing wrong with ambition. And it's just I think that she got pretty much screwed up over. She was pretty wild. They sent her to New Zealand, and before she got to New Zealand, she jumped ship in Tahiti.
Really?
And when she was about 10. And she spent a couple of days or weeks in Tahiti by herself. Then, of course, when she got out of that situation, she grew up. She decided she wanted a bunch of money, so she met this woman named, who I call Francie Marson. That's not her real name, but if I said her name, you'd probably even know her or could look her up. So I'm not going to say her name. And she got her gigs working for the Yakuza in Japan in a horror capacity, prostitution capacity.
Courtney Love went to Japan working as one of those dancers in Japan.
It's well established. She admits it in her own books.
Okay, I never heard it before, though. I'm with you, man. Yeah, I'm with you. I know that you back up everything you're saying.
Poppy Seabright. She wrote a book with Poppy Seabright called, I don't know, whatever. I forget the name of the book, but I'm the worst guy in it. She spends hours putting me down. Although she falls short of seeing, I give her acid.
Right.
But just there's ways to put me down, and they're all wrong. But, and I lost a lot of money on that one, too. And she's almost like challenging me to sue her so we can go to court at the zenith of her career. And I said, no, I'll wait till the airplane hits the mountain, then I'll sue you. I told her that. And so far the airplane hasn't hit the mountain with her in it anyway. But, I'm never going to sue her because I can't afford. She could knock me down with one stroke of the pen with all the money and power and fans that she has. And she has a lot of people, by the way, that she has dirt on. She's
right.
She's a great blackmailer. She knows how to really pump it up, man. And people will do anything to keep her mouth shut, including kill me. So here's my paranoid side. The reason we live out in the country somewhere, it's easier to defend ourselves out here. We're not offending anybody. And as long as Courtney can keep my books at bay and keep my any videos I would make or radio shows I would do shut up, then she has no need to really be too threatened by me.
I mean, you were talking about blackmail. You're talking about blackmail now. Am I confused, or did she make allegations about Ted Nugent?
Oh, she doesn't like Ted Nugent, and I know a lot of people don't like Ted Nugent, so I don't think that's a good point. But she made allegations about him, but that was after I don't have any control. I mean, that was long after she lived with me. That was after she became a major rock star. She also said she was married to she had an affair with Bob Dylan, and she also said she had she was the granddaughter or daughter of Marlon Brando at one time, and there's all kinds of crap running around out there. Anybody that believes anything she says, anything, even the press releases are just take it with a grain of salt.
Gotcha. Do you have any connections to Brando?
No.
Okay, just checking, man. Just checking, man,
I'm a horse farmer.
Okay, just checking. Now, Courtney Love she has a reputation of someone who takes revenge. Now, you're a psychologist. Where do you think that comes from? Does it come from you?
Probably. No. Well, maybe. I don't have a bad temper, but I have learned not to take revenge. That's something I learned when I was very young. So I don't think it came from me directly. But if it's in the genetics, then I guess, okay, maybe there's some of that. But mainly, she learned that in juvenile hall, and she learned it from this woman named Francie Marson, who she lived with. You got to get the book. You can figure out the name.
We will. I'm going to look into that. Okay, so now let's get into this.
Okay.
We're getting down to the last half hour.
This Francie Marson was the one that took revenge on everybody, because one of the books that Courtney got fascinated with was the series of books on how to get even. You know those books, Get Screwed and How to Get Even, and all those books, where they teach you how to write in and do bad things in your neighbor's mail and all that kind of stuff. She got fascinated by that, man. Really, really carried away with it. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, that's
and then I know one person. Yeah,
because I've read all those books too. Okay, and I never really.
So did I.
Yeah, right. Isn't that weird? Okay.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to go that far. I don't ignore the bastard.
It was popular around that time, though. But anyway, now let's get in. Now, why do you? First, let's start with this. Why do you think that Kurt Cobain was killed and that it wasn't a suicide. Now, I know you've done a lot of research into this, so let's lay it out. You two testified in court. Lay it out like a prosecutor.
Okay. All right. There's two. Okay. First of all, there's a guy named Tom Grant,
right,
who was an ex-sheriff, who I want to tell everybody right now is a great guy, terrific guy, very good super sleuth, good cop. He's a little bit to the right of center, but, you know, he doesn't like my politics, so that is a vote of contention. But I got to tell you, if it had been for Tom smelling what was happening, I wouldn't have been so happy. I knew the minute that Kurt died, because my wife called me from work and said, "Hey, Hank, she finally did it." I said, "Did what?" She said, "Kurt's dead." I said, "Oh, my God." Because from the very first second we knew, because she told us that she was going to kill herself a rock star when she was 14 or 15. How old was she? 16? No. Yeah. She was still in juvie when she said that, and then she came back and repeated it several times. And it meant that she was harboring a fantasy that she was going to find herself a rock star and get the money. And we knew that, sort of, but we didn't pay much attention to it, because a lot of kids have fantasies like that. And then when it actually happened, we both said, oh, you know.
Let's stop at Tom Grant for a second. Tom Grant. Now, is he still talking about this case, or has he been silenced?
No, he's really, really talking about it a lot. He's got a couple of books out or papers that you can buy from him, and he'll do a consultation lecture for you or with you. So, and I don't blame him. He's got other work to do. He can't be stuck in his whole life in his hole, you know.
Because I've tried to contact him, he hasn't replied to me.
No, he doesn't reply to people very much.
Okay.
He's sort of sick of the whole thing. And, you know, Courtney speaks for herself, but she goes up to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and there's Dave and Chris and all these other people up there, and Lord and Michael Stipe, and she goes up drunk as a Lord and says, she didn't even belong there. It was embarrassing, man. And the reason my granddaughter wasn't there, because I bet you any amount of money that little granddaughter is, Frances Bean, is very, very embarrassed. Other than that, go ahead and answer your question again, please.
Okay, well, the question is, let's get into it, man. Like, why do you think it was a murder and not a suicide?
Well, what the problem was is that Grant thinks I'm sort of honing in on his territory, but the truth is I had already, as you brought up earlier, had already done a lot of ritual homicide work years and years before I even met Kurt or heard of Kurt. So when he died, I started looking for ritual or some forensics, hyper-forensic, that's forensics other than just a crime scene, and I started to equate the sociological factors, whether or not a guy would kill himself with a newborn baby who he professed to love, and you know, the guy would never kill himself. So I got right there sociologically. I figured this guy's never going to kill himself. He's my grandson, my son-in-law. This guy's my son-in-law, you know. And I'm thinking this guy would never do that to his daughter. Because everything I heard about it, even through my mother and other people who didn't meet all those people, was that he loved her very, very much. So Courtney must have got jealous of the baby, which can happen. So we're not sure of that, but that's one of the things. So then I started snipping out, and then Tom started releasing data. And then the Seattle police started releasing data. And I started compiling a dossier based on the data, and the statistical probability of Kurt Cobain killing himself would be about 3,000 to 1 or 20,000 to 1 against, as it stands. Now, if you added, there's a computer score on each of the forensic things. But there's another thing that went on. Other people died subsequently and on down the line. The crime scene itself, while Kurt was laying there, nobody on the planet Earth has ever shot up that much heroin with probably a bunch of fentanyl. And Seymour Hoffman was a huge guy, and he died with a syringe in his arm, and bam, he fell down. Because when you have the amount of heroin in your system, right, I'm sorry, people out there that don't do drugs, but if you've ever been around a junkie, how close they'll tell you they come close to death every time they shoot up. They love that. It's an edge. But the thing is, it's suicidal in a psychoanalytic way. And I got to tell you, man, Kurt was messing around with smoking it. He wasn't shooting it up that much. So when they found the body, they found this very neatly reconfigured cigar box with the tourniquet put back in it. And all of the stuff laid out in a nice little half-empty Barks root beer bottle can and all that stuff. They laid out nice and neat. And so Tom said to me when I was still talking to him, yeah, did they check the blood that came out of the back of his head? There was almost none. He didn't blow his head off. Courtney said he blew his head off. But he didn't blow his head off at all. It was a low load. It was 16 gauge, and there was very little disfiguration of the facial or hair or anything like that. So
wait, hold on a second. It was a 16 gauge or a 20 gauge?
20
gauge. Now, let me ask you another question, too. Because now, in the Nick Broomfield documentary, he makes a big deal out of saying, oh, this doctor did a study where this other guy took more heroin, and look, he can stand on one leg. What is your response to that?
I think that's a pile of crap, because if it was the amount of heroin that he took, you see, the word more, that's why I'm a little bit distant at him, because the more heroin, and it doesn't really tell you where that study is, so you can't double check it.
Right.
And also, I don't know what more than what? More than they say he took, or more than the actual blood test showed? Because the blood test showed 10 times the lethal dose in Kurt's system, with 2 injection sites in the wrong arm. Take your left hand, think of yourself as left-handed, and try to shoot yourself in the left arm. You hit yourself in the shoulder. You can't inject it. Okay? So that is a lot of crap. And he got up and neatly cocked the gun, laid down, stuck it in his mouth, and pulled the trigger. With that level of load of heroin in it, who knows how many 20 minutes went by? You don't live 20 minutes after you shot up that much heroin. The guy on one leg probably died after he stood on one leg. You know what I mean? It's not been proven. But the forensic evidence is definitely leaning towards the absolute death was suspicious, and the amount of heroin they got in him. Well, I figured that out too, and Tom doesn't mention this, but I figured out that Courtney was messing around with a drug called fentanyl. And so was Seymour Hoffman, by the way. And it's very lethal stuff. And they mix heroin with it. If you mix heroin with fentanyl, you'll die if you get enough of it.
Really? I'm not familiar with that, but I did hear that there was diazepam, that he had Valium in his system as well.
Yeah, he still had some Valium in his system from the escape that he made from they gave him a 5 or 10 milligram Valium down in L.A., and that stays in your system 3 or 4 days. So when he escaped from the rehab down in L.A., he got on the airplane, he had a little bit of Valium. And that showed up on the test. But that doesn't have anything to do with the heroin.
Gotcha.
It might potentiate the heroin. It might potentiate the heroin even worse, but I don't think so, because he was smoking it. There wasn't any recent. The only 2 marks that were recently on his body, according to the examiner, were on the wrong side, and it's impossible. So somebody shot him up, and then they took him up there and put the thing in his mouth. And I'm not seeing Courtney pull the trigger on it, by the way. You know, I don't think she would have anything to do with a gun. But she had people around her that knew a lot about guns. And if you call away or write away for the book, Love Kills, The Assassination of Kurt Cobain, you will see the people that were around guns at that period and where they are now and how they got the guns and so forth. Now, one last thing I want to tell you about the gun issue is that the reason I called it an assassination as opposed to a murder is because I think there's political involvements in there. Not Democrat or Republican types of politicals, but Kurt was an firebrand. He was a guy that was trying to motivate kids to get up out of their lethargy and make some statements, some political statements, like Bob Dylan would do. You know?
Okay.
And like the Grateful Dead, even though he didn't like the Grateful Dead, he knew that his job was to get people up off their asses.
So, and he was doing that. So a lot of people, I think a lot of people skipped over the fact that he was political, and that's why I call it an assassination.
Yeah, there's been a lot of mysterious deaths of rock stars and musicians and stuff over the years. That deaths and overdoses, all kinds of stuff. Jim Morrison, the whole bunch. Now you think you think it's tied in with that kind of thing, right? Now, do you think it's possible that a lot of people I've talked to about this have said, well, Hank Harrison, they believe that you were Courtney Love's handler, and that Courtney Love is some kind of MK Ultra kind of
yeah, great.
What?
That would be good. If I were the handler, wouldn't I be paying myself some money?
What? I'm not telling you what I think. I'm telling you what I've heard. Do you think it's
telling those people. Yeah. I'm talking through you to those people. You asked me to tell the truth.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now. I'm broke. We're on SSI. We barely get by.
So then it's not you. But do you think that there was? Is that possible? That she's some kind of an MK Ultra kind of a mind control victim? That's
absolutely. But it wasn't where you think it was. It was in Oregon.
Okay, it was in Oregon. Oh, right, because she was on some kind of commune in Oregon. So tell us about that.
Okay, the mother used to bring in all these wacky gurus, including the scream therapists and the firewalkers, et cetera, et cetera. And Courtney and she had a Rolfer. You know what Rolfing is? Deep tissue massage.
Yeah, right.
Andy Warhol, that kind of thing. So Courtney was exposed to that when she was a little kid on this commune up in near in Oregon. I won't say exactly where. She knew the Kesey, Ken Kesey's kids, and that whole scene up there. They were wild hippies, and it was after the fact.
Whoa. Ken Kesey from the sexual studies?
No. Ken Kesey from Ken Kesey from the electric Kool-Aid acid.
Yeah, Mary Pranksters. I'm sorry, Mary Pranksters. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Neil Cassidy and all that. And Courtney, I introduced Neil to Courtney when I was hanging out with Neil, too, by the way. Anybody that's ever studied Kerouac knows what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I'm famous because I met Neil. The hell, that makes me really famous in my head, Anyway, make a long story short, Courtney got exposed to some pretty heavy stuff. And she told me and my wife and several other people on several occasions that she was given a series of drugs by a guy by the name of Dr. Farr, P-H-A-R-R. That's all I know about him. And he sort of disappeared into the wilderness. And I think that may have been an MK Ultra thing because she started acting real strange after that. But the drugs were hypnotic drugs, and she told me they were Tuinol. And Tuinol is what they used to call a Christmas tree, or a half Seconol and half Nebutol. Tuinol.
I remember Tuinol, yeah.
It's also referred to as a truth serum.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it didn't work, but that's what they thought, They were dangerously trying to get over the Korean and Russian brainwashing stuff after Korea to try to start an open wave of weaponry, chemical and psychological weaponry against various perceived and non-perceived enemies in the future, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was a bunch of hokum crap and a waste of time. But apparently the CIA and or somebody else promoted and had a lot of bread and gave money, lots of money to people to
Hank, before I lose my train of thought and I forget my question. Now later on, now along this thread of a possible MK Ultra kind of mind control.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But now later on, she goes on to do a movie about the story of Larry Flint, right? And
right.
who's in that movie is Woody Harrelson, whose father is an assassin. He's a convicted assassin, is suspected of being part of the JFK assassination by many people.
Right.
Now, is that an accident? How does that kind of thing happen? How does she find herself amongst that group?
The director, Nikos Forman. Nikos Forman is a Czech, and he got to Hollywood at a very early time. She met him when she was young, living in San Peckinpahs.
Sam Peckinpah's ex-girlfriend is a set designer and clothing designer, costume designer for a lot of Peckinpah's movies, including Straw Dogs and all those other Peckinpah movies, those westerns and stuff.
Yeah.
And you can look it up. If you want, I'm not going to give you the name, but you can find it really easy. If you just look up costume designer Sam Peckinpah, you'll see her there. She was the one that got hold of Courtney and started introducing him to all these people down in Hollywood at the time. And she talked to me on the phone one time. I was trying to find out where she was because she ran up a big phone bill on me. So I used the phone bill. Yeah, she did, and I ran up. That's how I tracked her down. And I kept tracking her down. And I said, look, if you're going to use my credit cards, stop. But why don't you get somebody to pay them because I'm getting broke here. It was thousands. In those days, it was 82, and it was thousands of dollars on the phone.
I remember.
And she said that she had stolen wasn't supposed to be that way because she managed to take one of these guys that she was sleeping with, one of her customers, when she was tricking. She got a list of free telephone numbers off this telephone guy who was a telephone executive or something. So she had all this going for her. And so I said, well, what are you doing? She said, I don't know. I'm going to let you talk to this woman. I won't mention her name. She called me on the phone about 5 minutes later and said, get out of our lives. You are killing Courtney. You'll never call her again or I'll have you assassinated on the spot, period. And she hung up the phone. And my wife was standing right there. And I said, oh, okay, well, I get it. So Courtney's friends are not exactly the nicest people on the planet. So, okay, I gave up at that point, only to be reassociated with the whole circle of stuff after we moved up to Los Altos. So, what can I say?
Okay, now you said that this woman who was connected to Peckinpah, she introduced Courtney Love to a whole bunch of people in Hollywood. Can you name any of those? Yeah, any of those influences, any of those people?
Well, okay, I have to give the guy's name, Jeff Mann, M-A-N-N. I don't want to use that name, but his mom was, what was her first name? Mann, M-A-N-N. And then she introduced almost everybody that Courtney knew in the rock and roll scene in West Hollywood, following James Moreland, and James knew all these documentary filmmakers. And then Courtney started wanting to be a movie star, so she started auditioning, and she got into Brewster's Millions of the crowd scene and several other movies that she wrote us about. And I checked it out, and there she was. So I know she was doing some hit acting for a while there, And
so she doesn't talk about that now, does she?
I'm sure that if you confronted her, did you ever do a bit part in a movie, she would say yes. She would tell you yes. I don't think she'd be ashamed of it.
Let me ask you a question. Now, are you willing to do the after show with us and take some calls from listeners and stuff?
Sure.
Oh, man, I love you, man. I love you.
I'll tell you why. You know why? I want to hear what they think.
So do I.
Okay.
I just got to find... Okay, my phone number to call in, guys. We're going to do the after show. It's going to be live on cjmarsradio.com and 365 Live. Call in to 702-605-4894. So write that down, 702-605-4894. I know you're going to have a lot of questions, or you could Skype me and I'll bring in on the call. Oh, my God. Okay, so now you think that there was a political assassination that was involved. Now, that makes a lot more sense to me. Now, do you think that Courtney was knowledgeable of this, or she's a victim of this, or she was just after the money, or what? What do you think?
Okay. I think when I say the word political, I'm taking poetic license.
Sure.
It was a homicide. Okay, we know that. What I'm saying was, if you give me poetic freedom to express myself along the lines a writer should be able to do in this culture, I will tell you that I believe that Courtney did not act alone, and that several people were threatened by Kurt for various reasons, again, names not mentioned, and those people had so much power you couldn't even dream of it.
Okay. Now,
beyond Hollywood. And
really?
Anytime, it involves stuff like being able to leave an airplane idling on a tarmac for 2.5 days on call. And in London, it involves being able to get a free airplane ride without having to check in or go through any computer on a moment's notice, so that you can go down to a rock and roll show and be seen there, sneak out the back door, jump on your private plane, go to Seattle, do whatever you have to do, come back from a private airfield. Yeah, in about 3 hours you can do that. If you have the kind of jet set quality friends that Courtney has. And there's the Versace thing. Courtney was at Versace's house 3 or 4 days, stealing all his stuff out of the closets 3 or 4 days before the guy got shot in the front. There's no exact connection there, I don't think. I'd be totally paranoid to think there was, but the coincidences start to stack up after a while.
Okay, yeah, the Andrew Cunanan stuff is very suspicious. There's a lot of suspicion around that whole situation. I had no idea that Courtney Love was in that house. Now, do you have that confirmed? How?
She went. What happened was she had a deal with Versace, and Versace said, "Okay, fine." She said, "What do you want?" And she did some photography and some modeling. And he said, "What do you want?" And she said, Donatella, the sister, was behind it. And she said, "What do you want?" And Courtney said, "I just like to have a couple of your little frocks." That's the way Courtney talks. "I'd like to have a couple of little frocks." And so she got some frocks. So the way I heard it, and this is secondhand, I must admit, but it's pretty reliable, she went into the mansion and got as many frocks as she could cram into the back of a rented van.
Was that reported in the news, any of this?
No, man, this is all stuff that came to me directly from reliable sources.
Okay.
They could tell me because nobody believed them either. They wanted somebody to believe them.
Okay, so, but there's no report that Courtney Love was in Versace's house before he died?
I'm sorry. I don't care.
No, I'm just asking you. Yeah.
My story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, that's great. That's big news,
There's
man.
another story.
Okay, it is a new story. It is a new story.
There's another story. There's another story related to the Versace, and that is this. Cunanan was in San Francisco, and apparently this Frenchie Marson and or Courtney introduced somebody to somebody who got into the pants of somebody.
Okay. Now, you're saying that Cunanan, you're right. Cunanan was from San Francisco. How the hell he got to Florida is a whole other story. Nobody really knows, okay?
Well, he was on the run.
Right.
He was on the run.
And then he was able to get around pretty well.
He was tricking. He was a gay tricker, hooker, and high-class gay prostitute. And he was, Versace introduced him, Courtney and Franchi introduced him, or their connections, introduced him to Versace. And Versace says, "Does he like to do kinky stuff?" And they said, "Yes, sure." So he went over to Cunanan, and I guess, and it all sort of became a marriage made in heaven after that for a while. And that's how Cunanan got to Florida. But he was on the run, too,
okay. We're going to get more into that on the after show, and I want people to call in. But we're almost at the end of the live show on freedomslips.com. Now, I want you to get out all the stuff you want to promote, your books and your websites and stuff like that. So now you have free reign for the next couple of minutes until we get into the after show. So tell us about tell us about the horse farm, everything, quick.
Anybody that wants to write me, please ask any questions. If you want to put me down or say shitty things, that's okay too. I get a lot of that. Send it to zendog@gmail.com, and that's Zendog with 2 G's, and I'll answer all the questions I can. And if you're really rude, I'll hang up on you.
If they're rude, send them to me, and I'll take care of it. HankHarrison.com. Fascinating man. Guys, go to his website, HankHarrison.com. Check out his horse farm. I got 3 of his books about the Grateful Dead that are on my blog, The Opperman Report. You can go there and click on them right away. If you didn't write down his email, it's on my blog, The Opperman Report. Hank Harrison, stay with us, man. Thank you so much. This is great information. And we'll see you guys next week. I got Stephen Single next week. You're going to love it.